what is their incentive today to change the system? Because
Right.
when it comes to a gold standard, they're really at the mercy of how much more gold is coming in, how their ability to tax people, and their ability to run surpluses and actually have proper fiscal responsibility instead of, what I don't even call it tax and spend anymore, Ron. I call it's just print and spend. That's all it is, because they're spending way more than they're able to tax.
Silver stackers and gold investors are always concerned about the threat of government confiscation. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Bald Guy Money. He came up with an interesting insight into why government confiscation is something that maybe we don't have to worry about too much. Bald Guy, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Thank you, Ron, for having me in the basement. It is really an honor and a pleasure to be here, man.
Bald Guy in the basement, right?
Yeah, exactly. I haven't been in the basement in a while, so it's nice to be back.
Yeah, well, I want to reiterate to my audience, your channel is Bald Guy Money. It's a channel that I watch. It's content that I take in on a regular basis. It seems like weekly you put out new videos. They always have something to do with silver and gold, has been my impression, and a unique insight. I think you and I we speak to the same audience, but you and I use different approaches. So there's you and I talking now, but there's also a third person, and that is the viewer. And the viewer may be concerned. I get that question all the time, like, is the government going to confiscate my gold? Is the government going to confiscate my silver? And you came up with what I thought was a brilliant insight in regards to that. Now, the stage is yours, Bald Guy.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on, Ron. Again, I think it's good that people like us talk together because, like you said, we have slightly different approaches, but when we get together, I think it's a great opportunity to put all those pieces together. And when it comes to government confiscation of gold and silver, I understand that, this is something that people can point to certain inflection points in history to say, okay, this is something that governments have pursued as a policy. That said, as a gold and silver stacker myself, I'm not particularly concerned about anybody coming and knocking on my door, especially when I'm looking at the alarming trends of central banks stacking specifically gold. Now, why is it? How does that play into the odds of them coming and knocking on my door and trying to take my gold personally? Because the gold that I have is a drop in the bucket compared to the gold that central banks have the resources to purchase themselves, okay? And if we look at central banks around the world, name a country with a central bank that's operating on huge surplus, that has tons of cash, a government, a federal government at the federal level that's taking in more money today than they're actually spending on, the sum of social programs, military spending, et cetera. There are very few examples internationally, despite the fact that all of these governments are stacking gold. So basically, I've come to the conclusion that these governments, which are broke, they are dead broke. They are running massive, massive debts, okay? And the debt is coming at the expense of the taxpayer, who is paying into programs like, for example, we know in the United States, Social Security. Many other Western countries have some form of social insurance for retirees, pensioners who eventually retire. And I mean, as many brilliant people have said, I've got a Robert Kiyosaki book right here behind me. Social Security and these national pension funds, those are the biggest Ponzi schemes going, Ron. And the fact of the matter is they're stealing the money today. They're printing money on top of it, going into massive debt. And what they're doing is they're collecting the real assets and limiting our ability to purchase it, number one, by driving up the price of it, which, I mean, we can see that in the price action over the last 30, 40 years, ever since the United States dollar went off of the gold standard. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the chart. But just recently, in the recent run-ups that we've seen over the last 5-6 years in the price of gold specifically, as a direct result of net purchasing by central banks, it is making it more difficult for the average person to get their hands on these once affordable hard monetary assets.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
Interesting. What about this component of it as well? When we in the United States, a lot of gold investors, silver stackers like to point back to 1933 when President Roosevelt confiscated everybody's gold. The reason he had to do that was because we were on the gold standard. So if he wanted to print more money, I mean, he confiscated all the gold, then immediately revalued it, which allowed him to essentially, indirectly print money. They don't need to confiscate gold now to print money. They can just print money, right?
Exactly. And I would throw a question back at you too, Ron. What is their incentive today to change the system? Because when it comes to a gold standard, they're really at the mercy of how much more gold is coming in, how their ability to tax people, and their ability to run surpluses and actually have proper fiscal responsibility instead of, what I call, I don't even call it tax and spend anymore, Ron. I call it, it's just print and spend. That's all it is, because they're spending way more than they're able to tax.
Right.
So what is the incentive for the people who are in power? I mean, Rothschild once said, give me control over the money and I will have basically control over everything, right? So these people, the powers that be, they have control over the money and they're able to print it directly out of thin air. I don't know. I'm sure your viewers have seen Alan Greenspan's recent appearance. I believe it was on NBC, one of the morning shows. And he said, well, the United States will always be able to pay its debts. Don't worry about a bond default. And his reason, his justification for saying that was because they can print more money.
Yeah.
So what is their incentive to give that up and return to the gold standard and actually have to come knocking door to door and confiscate it rather than just print the funny money and buy it up themselves? You tell me.
Right. There's none. They can just print at will. And if they even did want some what about this idea that if they did want gold, that they could just print money and buy the gold?
They're doing it though, Ron. It's happening right now. And if I go back to that video that I did on the topic, I used a country that is very close to me, which is Poland. I know Poland well. I lived there for many years. I know the specifics of how the country works, how the governments, the politics work in that country. And right now you have an incumbent government, which, I mean, there are lots of pluses and minuses. I don't want to get into the political aspect of it because I'm not a political commentator. But what I will say is that the government is spending more and more money all the time. Nominally, they do not have all of this money. And I'm very concerned that, I mean, a lot of the thought is around all of the Western world is, well, our GDP growth will in the future compensate for this. We'll be able to tax more and we'll be able to get ourselves out of this hole. But if you look at the history over the last 10 to 15 years and the stagnation that has existed in the West at the expense of major growth on the back of industrial production that is happening specifically in East Asia, there is no real pathway to grow the GDP enough to be able to get out of these huge debt levels. And Poland, as an example, is buying gold. They are getting their gold out of their foreign locations and bringing it back to the country. And the fact of the matter is the national government's dead broke. They don't have the money to do it, but they're doing it anyways because they're able to print and succeed in accumulating the gold.
Interesting. Yeah, I know there's been a big trend throughout the world of countries repatriating their gold, which I think comes back to what a lot of gold investors and silver stackers, one of their mottos, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And it seems now that we're even seeing that from the central banks. Yeah.
I'm holding it, Ron. I'm holding it because there
I'm holding it. We'll give it a high five, right?
What do you got there? I got a Krugerrand. What do you got there?
Well, here I have a Krugerrand too. Let me pick it up. There we go. Right, matching Krugerrands, right?
Beautiful. I love the Krugerrand. What a great coin. What a classic.
Yeah.
No, and Ron, I'm not really one of these extremists, like absolutely, if you don't have, if this is the asset that if you don't have this asset in your hand, then, you're going to be left out in the cold. I believe in owning many hard assets. I'm a real estate guy. I've been a precious metals guy for a long time. Some viewers think it's a little bit weird that I do have some Bitcoin, and that's a speculative play on the future. But again,
Sure.
I do have some of that. But the fact of the matter is that no matter what your feeling is on the economy, the possibility of financial collapse, et cetera, and I've illustrated it a number of times on the channel, specifically with the case of Turkey, because, maybe your viewers don't know, we're not actually located in the same country. I live in the Middle East, and you are in Central America, so Central United States, I should say. So it is, we do have a different perspective on that. And I travel to these countries a lot. I'm seeing what's happening on the ground floor of American politics, the consequences of a lot of the things that are happening now in the Middle East, in Asia. I'm seeing some of the things that are happening, for example, in Turkey. And why I come to Turkey is because they have experienced what can legitimately be called a financial collapse. The value of their local currency has totally collapsed versus other foreign currencies. And what I can say, and I've shown the analysis numerous times on my channel, is that people who held this is silver, and people who have held gold, I don't have that, are the people who were able to protect their savings and their wealth. And maybe you don't want to be 100% invested in that. That's not advice or anything like that. But I would say, as a backup, you always need to be partially into this, because at times when you're going to want to have some liquidity to be able to do the shopping and so on, you're going to want to have the value of your labor over the past X amount of years stored in something that's going to keep its value. And examples like what has happened in Turkey are cases in point that people, especially your viewers located in the United States, need to become aware of, because there's a lot we can learn from. Instead of focusing on something that might look like an episode of The Walking Dead where, there are people, it's like an apocalypse type situation. I think
people in their basement making YouTube videos. Yeah.
I think what we really need to do is really take a step back and say, okay, what is realistic in this situation? And we can look at a country like Turkey as a realistic example of a financial collapse, something that the United States could potentially become a victim of.
Yeah. And am I correct? I thought I read recently that Turkey was actually one of the countries, maybe it was in June or May, that actually was a net seller, the government, a net seller of gold. But the reason why was because their citizenry was purchasing it up from the government, and then it switched back to being a net buyer of gold. So
it was a little financial maneuver that they did to sell it back to their citizens. And what they did was, it was to prop up the Turkish lira. It was to prop up their native currency and keep the gold in the country. So that was, it was a kind of a chess kind of move. It was, very well thought out.
Yeah, I mean, these things do happen, and I have a little or a big job I do at night, and there's a cleaning crew that comes in at the end of the day, and they're a Venezuelan. There's the mom. I think she's 78 years old. Wonderful, nice people, and her two sons that are about my age. And I can tell you, to the extent I'm not very fluent in Spanish, but they love silver and they love gold. I can tell you that much. And because they lived through in Venezuela a financial collapse. So these, it does pay. Like you said, I like the way you said it. That silver Krugerrand is a storage of value. And I'm not putting words into your mouth, but it's a storage of work that maybe you or somebody else had done in the past, and it could represent a way in the future for you to trade it for another good, either goods or services.
People need to think of this as a battery, Ron. It's a battery.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm working today. I'm spending energy today, and I'm storing that energy in this. And the point of having this is to be able to get the same amount of energy out of it that I put into it. Because if I'm putting it in a piece of paper, well, forget it. I mean, history has proven multiple times. I've got my son right now. He's 14 years old, and I've got him reading the book Fake by Robert Kiyosaki. Went out for dinner with him the other night, and he tells me, you know, Dad, first paper currency, he starts telling me the history of how it was introduced in China and how all paper currencies have gone to zero. If somebody who's 14 years old, Ron, can understand that, then anybody watching this video should be able to understand that and understand the importance of using this as a battery to save the value of the energy they're spending on their work today.
Yeah. And, you know, Lynette Zhang has a pile of paper currency on her desk, right? And I think she says there's been almost 4,000 of them. And, you know, she also has a gun that shoots dollar bills. And, but, you know, Bald Guy, you did it again. You know, you gave me a new idea, a new concept, and I appreciate that, because I have to, honestly, I'd never really thought, and I think that's a great analogy, that this Krugerrand or any silver coin, that it really is a battery. Yeah, I mean, it's a storage of value. So, hey, this has been great. Can we promise the viewer who's with us now that maybe you and I will get together some more in the future, because you've shared some awesome information, and I would like to hope that at some point we could see you again back here in the basement.
100%. I'd love to come back to the basement and say hello to all of your audience once again and share some of my insights, you know, and also hear what you've got to say. And Ron, never be afraid to challenge me as well, you know, if you don't disagree. If you do disagree, I should say.
No, you know, that's what I tell people all the time on my channel. I'm like, it's good when you don't agree with me, because that actually gives me an opportunity to learn, you know. And I have one thing that I've experienced as I've grown through these 53 years is the older I get, the less that I realize that I know, and that there's such an opportunity to learn more. If people want to, and I'd highly recommend, right, to the viewer right now who's with us, we're in the basement right now, but if they want to go learn more about Bald Guy, your channel, YouTube channel is Bald Guy Money. Is there any other way?
Bob, that's it.
That's it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Bald Guy. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you, Ron. Take care.